Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. So here we go. I'm pretty sure you've noticed the frenzy of news and information that's been coming out of the cryptocurrency space, especially over the course of the last 2 weeks. We have been making incredible moves in the cryptocurrency market. I mentioned before, for those of you who weren't here about 5, 6, 7 or so videos ago, I don't know, I'm bad with numbers. The really weird part is that the movements that we're currently seeing right now in the market usually don't happen until the halving or about a month or two after the halving. So even at the time of me making this video, we are already at the point where near Bitcoin has just about almost tripled in price this year. This is completely unprecedented. And this is also part of the reason why I've been making videos for the last couple of years on this channel where I'm always like, here we go again. You guys know what happened. And it's usually news about like a gigantic whale who's been buying tons of coins somewhere within the ecosystem. And it's basically the metrics that we've been getting that there's not a lot of Bitcoin left. I saw people before when I was writing that as the title of some of the videos being like, oh, stop being so dramatic. And it's like, now I think people are actually beginning to understand what I was saying before. I wasn't saying because it sounded cool. No, there's really not a lot left. The idea of 21 million, I've gone over this before, we're going to breeze by it. The idea of 21 million doesn't really resonate in the human mind because it's a number that's far too large than what we normally deal with. We're used to seeing 4 or 5 people around us. We're used to seeing maybe 15 things around the house every single day that we keep using. But the idea of 21 million is quite staggering, regardless of the fact that you know that it's a number and understand it because you learned numbers when you were younger. The problem is that when you spread it out across 8 billion people, it becomes even worse because you really can't conceptualize how little Bitcoin that there actually is. When we've been getting news, I promise you, this will all lead up to something even more ridiculous than you can imagine. The news that we've been getting over the past couple of years that the amount of Bitcoin that is apparently lost and gone forever is guesstimated to be anywhere between 4 to 6 million. That is to say, the Bitcoin over the course of the last even decade, maybe the entire 14 years, that people had, maybe they lost, it was on a computer, they threw it away, it was on a hard drive, you name it, people lose things. And this is mainly because in the early days when people were mining themselves and didn't need the gigantic mining equipment that we currently have right now, you could in essence mine with your laptop. Imagine a 2007 laptop mining 50 Bitcoin per day. That's basically what it was. And the earliest adopters were mining so much Bitcoin, a lot of them forgot about it. They lost their computers, threw their computers away, bought a new one, saw that Bitcoin's price had risen to 3, 4, 5, 6, 700, and they were like, let me find the old computer. Oh, snaps, I threw it away. When you talk about that 90, I think it was 93%, these numbers are very important because we're nearing the finish line. I didn't expect that we would get to this point until the 2030s. That is to say, mass levels of adoption, the entire world changes, everyone gets into crypto, everyone knows Bitcoin. Bitcoin, even until 2019, 2020, was still relatively fringe. Part of the issue is that the events of 2020 kind of made people stay home and try to find other ways to make money. And people were like, stock market, so and so and so. And then they saw that cryptocurrencies were outperforming stocks by a 5 to 10 margin. And then at some point, everyone began to shift over into Bitcoin and it became really important. And then a lot of new people who got into the market began to get the news that there were companies and institutions who were actually into it. Because before that, all of these people, nearly the vast majority of new people in the market were hearing news that Bitcoin was terrible, it's horrible, it's awful, it's evil. But when you get into the cryptocurrency space and you hear actual cryptocurrency news, you're like, wait, countries are mining Bitcoin? Why didn't no one tell me this? It's because the people who own the news channels don't want you to know that kind of news because they're the ones who are buying up all the Bitcoin. Which then leads us into the entire other discussion of the importance of countries getting into Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure you can imagine in some sort of way why this is actually quite important. It isn't something like, oh, that's cool, whatever. We've had a lot of countries over the course of the last 4 years who have basically announced that they are not only mining Bitcoin is incredibly important. Not only do they add to the decentralization of the network, but it's showing that their local fiat currency actually isn't cutting it. So they're trying to find other ways to be able to bring money into their economy because they have failed to do so up until this point. So if you as a government get some type of professional assistant who's telling you about things that you could invest in and they tell you Bitcoin, you go, oh. And then they go, okay, well, hear me out here. Bitcoin was at 1,000. It's at 15,000. Now it's at 45,000. And then you go, okay. And you go, if you mine this, you are only spending this much on electricity, but you make this much money, there's my other hand, from the amount of Bitcoin that you're actually going to be making from it. And in that scenario, if Bitcoin's at 40-something thousand dollars and ends up going to $500,000, well, the country's making an exponential amount of money for basically doing absolutely nothing. Other countries hear about the exact same thing, and this is why we have multiple countries right now who are also mining tons of Bitcoin. Not even getting into the conversation that the US government also owns Bitcoin. You can Google it. We've gone over that before. It is fairly common knowledge, but the longer that people stay in the market and the longer that they hear the news, the more they really understand that, like, this isn't a fad. It literally has intense amounts of staying power. And I think in some sort of ways, you need to be in the crypto space for at least a year to really get it. A lot of people jump into the market because they want to make quick, fast, easy money. They see the market isn't going extremely fast as they would like it. Then eventually, I think the news begins to pour in and they go, that's actually a lot crazier than I was expecting. I've seen this from a couple of friends, hello, if you're watching, who have before told me like they get it now. One of my friends also recently, hello, became a Bitcoin maximalist, and I was quite shooketh when I like saw his text when he was talking about it and exactly like how much he was buying and things like that. The discussion then focuses or shifts to if we have heard and have confirmation that companies such as Fidelity and BlackRock are actively in crypto. This is very important. These companies, while not the most ethical on the planet, are basically titans of industry that can't be ignored. So upon hearing that BlackRock, Fidelity, and 11 other companies were trying to get a Bitcoin ETF, it kind of set off a lot of alarm bells for a lot of people since the beginning of the year. And this is why we've almost seen Bitcoin's price basically triple, because people are like, wait, if they got into it, like this actually means something. Companies don't get into things. They don't list for ETFs and they don't have these like funding rounds, et cetera, because they're like, let's deal with it for like 6 months and see what happens. No, this means that they're trying to be into it like forever. They're trying to push out as many other people as they possibly can to make sure that they are the actual front of the line. When this happens, I think a lot of people, this isn't a... Okay, I'll say it this way. A lot of times I've noticed that people don't actually understand the power of money. And that's not coming from a standpoint of like, money is amazing. It's more of like you may find it hard to grasp the amount of power you have as a person if you have $50 billion. The world leaders you can talk to. The government leaders, you can kind of be like, hey, come to my private island this weekend because I have something to discuss. Like they'll go there. You have an enormous amount of power. When you talk about an $11 trillion company like BlackRock getting into the space, it's going to cause massive rumbles. It's not going to cause like little people being like, oh, that's kind of cool. They're getting into it. People who understand finance and who understand money, they're going to be like, okay, this is it. We need to buy as much as we possibly can because they're clearly preparing and have been preparing for something for a very long time. Usually the time frame that we get within the cryptocurrency space is roughly around 2014, somewhere around there, when all the institutions and banks and companies actually got into the space, lied to the public and said that Bitcoin was terrible. Remember the entire blockchain, not Bitcoin kind of thing. And then they turned around 2019 and were like, oh, hey, yeah, we are also in the space. Bitcoin is quite amazing, which means that they had been gathering it for a very long time. On the topic of like sovereign money, government money, and like accumulation behind the scenes, it does not make a lot of sense that we would have only heard from it's been around 12 different countries right now who we know are actively into Bitcoin. It doesn't make a lot of sense that we would hear from BlackRock and you simply assume that it's only circling around the BlackRock sphere and no one else has a portion of this information or hasn't been talking to them. If you hear that this $11 trillion company, the CEO or whatever who you invited to a party at one time, to your quinceañera or whatever they're inviting each other to, you call them back up and you go, hey, I just saw you're trying to get an ETF. Can you explain to me why? This is a president or a prime minister. And they go, sure, I'll give you the whole rundown. And then you as a government go, okay, we have to basically do the exact same thing. The news right now, and this is like shockwaves. Everyone's kind of freaking out about this because this is also just one country. This isn't 16. This isn't 35. This isn't the entire planet. This is one. I saw this news and I mentioned it before and I was kind of like, okay, let's see where this ends up going, because I've seen a lot of times that a lot of the people who release news like this, while they tend to be more eccentric within the cryptocurrency space, they also sometimes tend to be like correct. They have insider knowledge. They usually release it when they shouldn't, or kind of let the public know when they aren't authorized to actually do so. There's someone by the name of Max Kaiser. He's a very eccentric, I don't want to say camp, but he's kind of like a all out there kind of person. If you've ever seen him on stage, he's like a character. He recently said that he believes that at some point in the very near future, Bitcoin is going to produce a God candle. If you've ever seen like the candle charts, like with the long lines, like one is green, one is red, one is green, one is red, like kind of like you've seen them, like the very long lines. A God candle is basically a candle that goes completely straight up and doesn't stop, and it's completely green. We get green candles whenever someone is buying. So if we see that a large buy order has happened, if you look at any type of candle chart from the course of the last like month or so, you can type in like Bitcoin candle chart and you'll see like there's been certain like green straight lines up, which means that there was a huge amount of Bitcoin purchased at one time. Max Kaiser said that he heard, wink, that apparently there's a government around the world who's looking to buy or procure a massive amount of Bitcoin. And he says that this God candle that will be produced from that purchase will cause a $100,000 uptick in Bitcoin's price instantaneously. That is to say, from the purchase, or even, and it's actually even less than that, which we'll get into, will cause a movement. So let's say Bitcoin's price is at 40,000 something or other. It would instantaneously from this purchase move to 140,000. This also ties very strongly into all the other price predictions that we don't have time to go over in this video, of people talking about exactly where Bitcoin's going to be by next summer, that are also like a little bit like startling at this point, because you realize that like it's gotten real. We're no longer at this like, maybe we'll get there. It's like, no, like the big boys are in this game right now. They're taking over basically everything. Max Kaiser alluded to the fact that he heard information that the government of Qatar apparently is trying to find a way to buy Bitcoin. The first issue is that they're apparently trying to buy $500 billion worth of Bitcoin. We don't know if it's in one go, but the rumor is that they're trying to basically get their position in Bitcoin as quickly as possible and then secure it. That is to say, no buying 100 Bitcoin per day, no buying 1,000 over the course of a month. It's there. Let's buy it now before Bitcoin eventually goes to that $1 million. Second issue, not only are they allegedly trying to buy $500 billion, $500 billion worth of Bitcoin, if you've been paying attention to this channel and the other articles that we've been going over on a near daily basis, there's not a lot of Bitcoin left. Can anyone tell me the problem with trying to buy $500 billion worth of Bitcoin? Anyone in the class? It's estimated that there's only around $67 billion worth of Bitcoin even left on crypto exchanges. So we've been talking for the course of the last 2 years about the amount of Bitcoin being taken off of exchanges. Whenever we talk about it's being purchased, it's being bought by people, it has consistently, someone purchased it, it moved off of an exchange, and we saw that it went to some type of a like a ledger or like a cold storage device. Now, riddle me this. What happens if people have been buying over the course of the last 14 years, squeezing it even down to the last 2 or 3 years, in massive, bulky portions? And then one government goes, well, let's try and buy 500 billion of it. And there's not 500 billion left. They basically would then absorb the entirety of all the Bitcoin that's left for normal people. The entire idea of Bitcoin, for those of you who missed it a long time ago, is it's meant to be for you. It's meant to be for normal people. It's meant to be for the 8 billion people on the planet. There's that number again. If every single person on the planet had an equal allotment of Bitcoin, you would all have 0.003 Bitcoin. It comes out to around 300,000 Satoshis, the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. What happens when there's actually none left? Now bring it on back for a second. Remember I told you, this is one country. What happens when Dubai decides to do the exact same thing? When other European countries start to do the exact same thing? Like we know, I think it's the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund also has an allotment of Bitcoin as well because of exposure to, I believe, MicroStrategy, who's also buying up tons of Bitcoin all the time as well. Insane. Like I'm trying to compose myself to keep myself together. But we've gotten to the point where I think things are going to get a lot crazier than people are expecting. The predictions for Bitcoin's price next year alone, I've been in crypto for a while, and we normally don't see this current level of excitement until somewhere around the beginning of 2025, when everyone knows that we're at the final leg of the race. At the time of me making this video, we don't have a Bitcoin ETF. We don't have Bitcoin ETFs. It's expected that multiple of them are going to go through at the exact same time. The discussion about the ETFs, about the halving, about interest rates being frozen and potentially being decreased next year. There's something else that I'm also missing. Just a generalized buying and energy around the halving as well. There's some other major event that I'm also forgetting off the top of my head. But yes, we have entered a very particular time in history. It was guesstimated about a decade ago that when we got to around 2028, 2032, thus me being over the 2030s, that's when the world would kind of wake up and realize that Bitcoin was something. If you've ever looked at the guy, his name is Plan B on Twitter. He has, and there's also multiple episodes on the What Bitcoin Did podcast, not affiliated, just more he's always on there. And there was an episode a couple of years ago where he was going over one of his charts, and he was talking about back then, not now, back then, just the generalized accumulation, the accumulation that we saw back in 2017 and 2018 from everyday normal people and from a couple of smaller institutions who were also buying. He said his chart by the time it gets to 2032 shows a $1 million plus Bitcoin. And he's like, I can't begin to fathom how much higher that number would be if we heard that governments and companies and countries and institutions were also buying tons of Bitcoin as well. There literally at this point is not enough Bitcoin to go around for even some of you. I know that sounds completely insane. 21 million. No, less than that. We have only mined, I believe, 19 million. 6 million are gone. That's 13 million. It's estimated, the last time that we got this number, I believe it's estimated that 1.2 million Bitcoin is actually left on exchanges for 8 billion people. I believe that we have entered a gigantic global shift in money and monetary policies, whether you can feel that or not. It is abundantly clear, at least to me, after having gone over news daily in the cryptocurrency space, that we are probably going to enter a near complete digital future. That is to say, AR, VR, wearing headsets, and all these other things. We're already on our phones the entire time. We mainly pay digitally. I think that value will be stored digitally as well, as we see a lot of governments, if you've been missing it, are trying to digitize securities further, or things that can be considered securities, and NFTizing them, basically like putting them onto a blockchain, being able to discern that this is different than this actual thing, therefore a non-fungible item. And it's, I believe, going to be the people who hold these assets who are basically going to be able to hold the world. And this is why I think we see this massive amount of accumulation. And this is going to sound weird, but I think it's basically because the people who kind of control the world have kind of all come together and decided, not to sound tinfoil hatty, but you understand, like BlackRock getting into Bitcoin isn't because they like the sound of how many syllables it had. They're doing it because they know the potential of being able to make money. The other wealthy people are paying attention, and this is why they're accumulating so much. Yeah, really, really fascinating, crazy times ahead, I think, for all of us. The article will be placed in the description below in case you want to read it and see exactly what's going on. Yes, I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting, and I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.